Hey guys, welcome to this latest episode of Understanding with John T. Today I want to talk about AI and how things are changing in the world and kind of address some of the anxiety out there. Because recently I asked my AI assistant if it was going to take my job, and it said it would, but honestly, you don't make enough money. So that hurt. That hurt on a lot of levels, especially since it wrote that joke for me. Um, so seriously though, today I do want to talk about AI. I want to talk about kind of all this noise out there about AI replacing us. And I'm kind of operating on the assumption that that's the plan. That's what's going to happen. And despite that, I'm optimistic. And I want you to be optimistic too. I want you to understand how the good and bad of what's coming, right? And how we have a lot of power in our hands, and we don't even realize it. And so instead of just knee jerk reacting to the situation, being fearful, being angry, I think if we take this in a measured way, we have time. So if we just take these steps and we have these conversations and we figure out, what are the different paths forward, I think we can really maximize the benefit to ourselves, to our children, to our society. So let's get started. I'm actually watching a YouTube video right now, an interview with an expert on AI security. And he is painting a very doom and gloom scenario, I do have to say. But there is room for hope, okay? And the hope I felt came from another interview I watched recently with Anthony Hopkins. So let me briefly share kind of what Anthony Hopkins shared in this interview. I think he was asked something about, like, were you always destined to be this great actor? And his response was surprising. He was like, he was like, by no means. He's like, I thought I would be a failure my whole life, because that's what his parents thought of him. They said, look, you don't do good in school. You're not good socially. So we basically don't have any hope in you. And Anthony Hopkins took this as a challenge. He went out into the world. I think this was like close to the time when he was graduating or after he graduated from high school. And he just ran into this kind of performance. I think it was being done at a local church. And he asked the pastor if, he could join in and participate. And they gave him a part, and he performed well. Even he surprised himself. But he says, like, the reason he was looking for that was because he felt this need to prove himself. It was like, look, everybody thinks I'm a failure. I'm going to show them. And so he went out into the world looking for that opportunity. Let me explain why that gives me hope. Because we're afraid of AI in the same way that Anthony Hopkins' parents were afraid for him. They looked at the world, they looked at opportunities and what made somebody successful, and they were like, this kid doesn't have it. And we're looking at the world and we're like, we can't compete with AI. We can't compete with robotics. How are we going to survive in this world? But we have to understand that these systems only produce a very narrow range of success, right? Schools basically train us to be factory workers, to work in a cubicle, to fit in, to almost do the work of a robot, of a machine, of a computer. So is it any wonder we're looking at the future, we're looking at AI, we're looking at robotics, and we're like, I can't compete with that. We can't compete with that. I mean, it's true, we can't. But in the same way that Anthony Hopkins' parents didn't see the opportunities out there, all of the opportunities, we're also missing all of the opportunities in this world of AI and robotics, which means the problem isn't AI and robotics. The problem is our mindset. The problem is how we're looking at the situation. Because Hopkins didn't thrive by fitting into a certain mold. He thrived by looking outside of the system, not by fitting in, not by, looking backwards. He looked ahead. He looked at what existed outside of school, outside of, social connections. What, where did he have a passion that wouldn't be nurtured within school, wouldn't be nurtured within what typically people thought of as successful? And that's the shift that we need also. This shift looking for the opportunities that are coming, looking for the opportunities that exist outside that narrow mold that school is preparing us for. Because while AI may replace repetition, AI will replace obedience, AI will replace conformity, it will never replace those things that make us human. And I know it's hard because we have, human beings, we have this concept called sunk costs. So, when we invest so much of our time, our effort, our energy into anything, we hate to give it up. We hate to say it was all for nothing. But this is something entrepreneurship taught me. You can't base your future actions on past ones. So if I spent 3 years working on this one project, but then now I know it's doomed to failure, I can't tell myself, well, no, I just need to work harder and make it work. That's not a logical reaction, but it's a very human reaction. So when we spend 12 years, going through K through 12th grade, when we go to college and we go to grad school and we invest all this time, all this money, all this effort, we've achieved all these kind of grades and honors, achievements. It's hard to say, no, I'm going to break with that and I'm going to find new opportunities. I'm going to break with this mold. Well, the further we've gone in our education, the more we've been pushed into this mold. We've been pushed into this idea of what success looks like, what achievement looks like, what makes us prepared for the future. And like I said earlier, schools were created to prepare us to fit into that mold, to work on that assembly line, to work in that cubicle, to conform, to do repetitive work, to obey without question. And unfortunately, the opportunities of the future, they come from somewhere else. They come from us actually looking for opportunities, exploring our creativity, exploring our talents, exploring what makes us human. Because all of those things we've been taught, that, like I said, that repetition, that conformity, that obedience, that's all stuff AI can do. They can do the minutia, do that repetitive work, do that mind-numbingly boring stuff. And for the longest time, I think most of us have felt that. We feel trapped in these jobs, doing this repetitive work, stealing and destroying our humanity. And that's why I say the future of work is, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of opportunity to reclaim that humanity, to follow our passion. And it's a scary thing. Like I said, sunk costs. We've invested all this time and effort. In truth, we haven't lost everything, right? We can take things from it. We've learned lessons. We've learned how to work hard. We've learned information about math and science and history. Now we need to pursue those things that arouse in us curiosity. And this is something that comes very natural to children. NASA actually did a study years ago trying to identify creative geniuses within their organization. And after the study, they decided to continue looking at genius in our schools. They found that 98% of 4 and 5-year-olds actually qualified as creative geniuses. They fell into that category. But what happened is, as children went through our educational system, the percentage of creative geniuses fell precipitously from year to year, until by the time people reach adulthood, there's only 2% in the population. So this really shows us that the education system we have is really not preparing us for the opportunities of the future, because being a creative genius, being able to think outside the box, being able to be human, that that is a lot more difficult for a machine to do than it is for us to do. And that is where we have a competitive advantage. And again, this is something I learned in business. You want to go to where you have a competitive advantage. You want to go where you don't have to compete with everyone else. And in this case, we don't want to compete with AI and robotics. You want to be able to do something only you can do that they can't compete with you at. Even in my own life, actually, so maybe a few months ago, my son was in school and he loves doodling. He loves drawing. He loves art. He loves creativity. And we try to encourage him. But he's also a studious kid, so I don't feel a need to kind of keep that in check. I'm like, he does his work. Once he's done his work, I'm fine with him being creative and pursuing those passions. And that's what he did in school. He finished his schoolwork, and then he started doodling. And the kid next to him is like, hey, you're not supposed to do that. You're not on task. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Well, you're getting in trouble. And my son got upset at him. But that kid understood something, picked up an unspoken lesson that my son didn't pick up, okay? And that lesson is you need to obey, you need to conform, you need to do what you're supposed to be doing. This is not a space to pursue your passions and it's incredible what we pick up. It's incredible. But that lesson that other kid picked up, it's destroying his humanity. It's destroying his natural curiosity. It's destroying his natural creative genius that will serve him in this new world, this new economy, this new AI dominated world. And you know, I feel bad. You know, I had to have a conversation with my son too, because he was also at risk of losing this passion, because he explained to me, I finished my work and then I did doodling, and I'm completely fine with that. And we even had a conference with the teacher, and you know, he knows this is going on, and he's also fine with that because we explained our philosophy, and he is on the same page. So it actually worked out really well. But this is what we need to be aware of. You know, school is both very good but also very dangerous. And so as parents, we need to be aware of this. Yes, we want our children to pick up the basic skills. We want them to know how to read and write and do math and learn history and all these different things. But we can't allow their natural genius, their natural creativity to be squashed in the process, all in the name of conformity, all in the name of obedience. That is dangerous. So I hope the study and my story illustrate that the problem isn't AI. The problem is our mindset. The problem is what we train our children to do in school. Our kids don't need more discipline. They need more imagination. They need more time for imagination. They need more opportunities to express and explore their imagination. They don't need stricter schedules. They need more time for exploration. And the good news is we parents can supplement their curriculum. You know, the school may take a while or may never catch up to this, but we can supplement their time when they come home. We can create those opportunities, those times to be creative, to explore their interests, to dig in deep, to find what makes them human and what their unique little minds find fascinating and want to explore. Be there for them. Be them. Buy them books. Bring them to the library. Let them borrow books. If you have the budget, find some after-school programs that can nurture them. You know, we can do these things. We there's still time. There's still, if you have kids, if you have, you know, elementary, middle school, heck, even high school kids, there's still time for them to learn how to adapt to this new world, because the future is going to belong to people who can create their own opportunities, who don't just wait for them to be handed to them or apply for them. The world will not be a world where we apply for opportunities. It's where we seize those opportunities. And a good example of that is people who go on YouTube, go on TikTok, and share what they're interested in. It could be something as simple as dancing or tricks. It could be something as, riding a bike or cars, or it could be something much more, in depth, building, creating robots, programming. It can even be video game playing. It could be, there's so many interests that children have where they can express it and they don't have to wait. Some people love cooking. They create their own cooking programs. Travel, create their own travel programs. And, these are the things that we humans do and we love doing, and it's genuine and authentic. And, no matter whether an AI can create a fictional person that travels the world, there will always be people who prefer the real thing, who prefer those real insights, prefer those real emotional reactions. There's always going to be a space for that. And that is the space where we have a competitive advantage. But nobody's going to give our kids that opportunity. We have to prepare them to seize those opportunities, to create those opportunities for themselves. And I'm sure, like me, you're also realizing that that's not the only concern, right? Right now, our government is funded, whether on the federal level or the state level, by our work, by our labor. We get taxed based on our income. What happens if we lose jobs? What happens if there's a precipitous loss in employment and therefore a loss in tax revenue? What are we going to do? How will roads get built? How are fire stations and police stations and even schools going to be funded? And this is another very good question, because we need to start thinking about those issues. We need roads. We need police stations. We need fire stations. We need the infrastructure that we all benefit from. And there are so many other ways that AI will affect our future. But the way forward isn't just a knee-jerk reaction. No, we don't want this to happen. We want life to stay the way it is, because it just can't. I wish we could legislate our way out of this, because my daughter is also very anti-AI, and I had to have this conversation with her. It's like, she's like, why can't the world just stay the way it is? I'm like, okay, let's assume we pass legislation, we outlaw AI outright, okay? Well, other countries are going to allow it to be developed, and they're going to get really good at it, and they're going to control the future economy. Those AIs may even be used to attack us. They may be used to build incredible robots that become a robot army, and then we can't possibly fight against. Or even, those robots then are building cars. They're building, all the things that people need. And so the cost of goods in these other countries goes down precipitously. The cost for ours goes up. We can't sell our products overseas. So again, that hits our economy. And then we have a choice. Do we let in the cheap goods and then destroy our industries completely? Or do we, transition? And then are we transitioning too late? And there are a lot of problems in stopping progress. It puts us at a huge competitive disadvantage, and we pay the price in the long run. And companies who have done that have paid that price. Like, I remember reading about Kodak in the 70s already created the digital camera, but they're like, we're not going to develop this because we make so much money from film. And if we have a digital camera, then we don't need film, and we're going to lose in the long run. But what happened eventually is somebody did develop the digital camera and totally destroyed their business. And there's a reason we don't really hear Kodak anymore. It was everywhere when I was growing up. Kodak film, it was ubiquitous. So trying to legislate or control and stop progress isn't the way to make yourself stronger. It is usually the way you make yourself weaker and end up destroying your company, your country, whatever level this is at. But it's important we keep that in mind. And the ramifications for the future, I think it's difficult for us to predict. But I'm a big sci-fi guy, so I've watched all these utopian, dystopian future movies and read these books, and it's fascinating all the different scenarios that people have come up with. Like a future like Dune, or a future like the Hunger Games, or a future like Terminator, or a future like Star Trek or Star Wars, right? So there are all these potential futures depending on the kinds of decisions we make as a society. If we decide that, we don't like this idea of taxing big corporations, or doing a wealth tax, or finding another revenue source other than labor, then what happens is you can end up in a Hunger Games like situation where we're all pit against each other fighting for the scraps. So that's one potential outcome that we have to understand, like the decisions we make lead to certain consequences. And again, a knee-jerk reaction isn't enough to get us out of the situation. We need to have conversations. I'm not the end-all, be-all of this conversation. There needs to be a lot more. There needs to be a lot of back and forth. What are the different ways we can raise money? Maybe there's somebody who's even more creative. Maybe we don't need a wealth tax. Maybe we don't need to tax corporations at a higher level. I don't know. But this is a model even, people in Silicon Valley are looking at. Do we need a universal basic income? Everybody just gets paid for being in this country. And then, we can all survive in that because the cost of goods has gone down tremendously because robots and AI is managing the entire society. And all we need to do is we can survive on the money we get, right? We can thrive even. But if we want more, or if we want to pursue our passions, there are opportunities for us to gain even more money. So this would be the Star Trek type of future, a utopian future, where we have leveraged the technology to serve all of humanity and benefit all of humanity. And then there are the more dystopian futures where, we really didn't pay attention to the development of AI and robotics, and they rebelled, and there was a war between humanity and the robots. Things like The Matrix, stories like Terminator, stories like Battlestar Galactica. That's a warning, right? We really need to watch this carefully, watch this closely, see where it's going. There needs to be legislation in place to help guide these corporations as they develop this technology. And then I mentioned the economic future, right? The Hunger Games versus Star Trek The Next Generation type of future where, how do we distribute wealth? Is it still concentrated in the hands of the wealthy and the rest of us have to fight for the scraps? Or do we distribute? We give everybody a basic income, they can survive, and then work becomes an opportunity for enriching that life, financially, or even by adding meaning. That's why the people on the Starship Enterprise are doing that, because they feel enriched. Their life is enriched in pursuing their interests in medicine or, captaining a ship. There are always opportunities for us to pursue our interests and be a part of these things, because we don't need the money. We don't need a job to survive. We've taken care of survival using the technology, using the resources that we've developed as a society. And then all we do beyond that is for personal enrichment. If you are worried, if you're concerned, you have every right to be. And it's good to be, because there are real risks. There is going to be a real social change, societal change. Who benefits from this technology? Does everybody benefit, or only those who have the most wealth and power in society? To also talked about the societal ramifications of not monitoring and controlling the development of the technology. There are real reasons to be concerned. I'm hopeful we can take the best of this. I remember when I was young, I saw people who started businesses, they already had money, because you had to have a lot of capital to start a business. And then, after I left medicine, the internet was already in place, social media starting, and the cost of starting a business went down tremendously. You can have an online presence. You can market on social media. The opportunities for people to earn a living and start their own business just exponentially increased. And I see the same thing happening with AI and robotics. The opportunities, the cost of starting a business is going to go down tremendously. You see some people just creating videos. There's a really great example in the news recently. There's that YouTube or TikTok star, Kabi. I don't know exactly how to say his name. Lame, Lame. He did these really videos where he watched people do silly things, and he's like, what are they doing, right? He would just point at it and with this silly expression on his face, and it became very popular because of that. So this guy grew up very poor. I think he was even born in Senegal, and then I think he lived in Europe, but I don't think his family was doing that well. He just sold, I think, the rights to his image and likeness over $900 million. This guy's nearly a billionaire. Just a phone and his reaction to the silly things people do. That's being human. And it resonated. And he will probably never have to work a day in his life after this if he doesn't want to. But he will. Because, people like that who explore their humanity, explore their interests, they're always going to do things just because it's fun. They find it amusing. That's very human. I think we've gotten so used to living lives working just to survive, just to make money, just to, be a slave to our houses, our cars, our standard of living, the opinions of our neighbors. This new world is going to change that. There are always people who do that, who live for other people, but those people who are truly curious, who truly, double down on themselves and their humanity and their interests and their humor and their love for travel or cooking or whatever it happens to be, they're going to do well in this world. And it's time for us to start shifting our mindset, and instead of being afraid of how things are going to change, be hopeful for all the opportunities that we're going to be given. Like I said, the cost of business is going down, and there are examples of so many people out there who are doing things on social media who have cashed in, who have done tremendously well. Mr. Beast, for example, right? Another example of somebody on YouTube who's done tremendously well. And the opportunities will be well beyond social media. Like I said, once you have AI and robotics, the sky's the limit. Like the type of business that you run, it'll be insane. It'll be really insane. So I'm personally looking forward to it. I know there's going to be speed bumps along the way, but it starts with us having these conversations. It starts with us understanding exactly how our government works, how funding our government works, and what are the options. And then also nurturing it in our children, nurturing this change in our children, and having conversations with people about okay, how can we move forward? So in conclusion, I really don't believe AI is going to destroy us, but our mindset might. And this is the dangerous thing. I think what usually harms societies are the people. And right now we're in a very divisive time. And so if we really want to move forward together and create that utopian future, create that better future, we've got to get over ourselves. We've got to get over these divisions. We've got to start seeing the humanity in each other and stop believing the lies of those who want to divide us. The future's plentiful, but these people will create a Hunger Games future where we're so busy fighting, we don't care that we're being manipulated, that the wealthy and powerful are just dividing and conquering, are using our fear and anxiety and anger to keep us down. and then they'll let us compete with each other, for the hope of moving up. And I'm here telling you that that doesn't have to be our future, but we have to start that conversation now. We have to get past our fear, get past our anger, work on our mindset. That it will create a cultural shift that will propel us in the right direction. Also understand the sunk costs of our education system. Yes, and even the education system our children are going through. That there's some benefit to it, but there's also harms. So let's stop feeling stuck in that mold. There's a new exciting future coming, and it belongs to those who double down on their humanity, who pursue their curiosity, who pursue their imagination, who explore, who think, who create. And remember the Anthony Hopkins story. It definitely gives me hope. We can't imagine there was a time that Anthony Hopkins' family didn't believe he had it in him to be a success. But that's what happens when we limit when our understanding is limited by these tools we use to evaluate ourselves. There are more opportunities out there for those of us who don't fit the mold. And as a matter of fact, we're all going to be required to not fit in the mold anymore. And let's start not just challenging this mindset in ourselves, but nurturing this new mindset of exploration, creativity, imagination in our children. Help them to find their passion, pursue it, and explore it. Like I said, bring them to the library. It doesn't have to cost money. You can bring them to the library. You can go online. I'm not a huge fan of consuming media on social media and internet, but if that's where they find what they're curious about, let them pursue it. Let them understand it. Just find time for them to also create, to work on this project, to be bored. That's when they will start finding the joy in not just consuming the content and creations of others, but creating their own creations, creating their own content, creating whatever it is they want to create, whatever they're passionate about, and sharing that with the world. And so I'll leave you this. It's not technology that will determine our future, it's our values. So we need to deeply work on ourselves and explore ourselves and improve ourselves, and we'll see a return on that investment. We're going to see the hope and opportunity that we've been missing because of our fear. So these are the things I'm calling for. These are my call to action points. Number one, let's work on our mindset. Let's see this brave new world for what it is, a truly brave new world of opportunities for us and our children and everybody. Let's keep in mind that utopian Star Trek future that's been painted for us, where we've used technology, we've used these advances to make sure everyone is taken care of. Everyone has got housing, clothing, food, health care. We've taken care of everyone, and we all now have the opportunity to explore our interests, to live a more fulfilled life, to not live the life of a slave, of a robot that we've been forced to. I mean, we're fighting for something that none of us really loves. No, do we love working in a cubicle? Do we love having to listen to a boss that demeans us and humiliates us and keeps us from our families, keeps us from pursuing interests? That to me isn't a life worth fighting for. I know there's this fear in the unknown, but I'm telling you, there's opportunity. If you look at the progress of technology and the opportunities provided for us, there is a better future, but it requires bravery. Because yes, it's easy to be a slave. You don't have to do anything. You just listen to your master and try not to get whipped, and he'll feed you and he'll clothe you, with the scraps that are left over. That's the stark choice we face. Do we want to remain a slave, or do we want to fully realize our humanity? It requires bravery. It requires courage. It's scary. The past feels safe, but I'm telling you, the past is that nostalgia. I'm sorry, it's not that great. I remember us all complaining about cubicle jobs and crappy bosses, and from the stories I'm hearing from friends in corporate America, it's not getting better. It's getting worse. The second call to action is let's supplement the education system, forcing our children to fall into these molds, to be evaluated by these molds that are no longer relevant. This education system is setting us up for failure. It's pitting us against machines, and we will lose in a competition with machines. You know, the kind of work that people do in cubicles, the kind of work people do on factory assembly lines, we cannot compete with machines, and we will lose. We will lose. So time to invest in our children and make sure that they can outcompete machines by doubling down on their humanity, their curiosity, their inquisitiveness, their desire for exploration, and understanding the world and sharing that with others. So as an example, my son loves art. He loves building. He loves computers. He's even said he wants to be a mechanical engineer. And I honestly don't know if there will be a mechanical engineer opportunity in the future. But I'm helping him pursue that, right? What he does may not be a mechanical engineer role, but he will likely be able to use those passions, those skills he picks up along the way to realize what he wants. Like, one of the people he really likes following on YouTube is a guy who invents things, and then he sells those inventions for kids to build at home. And so there are ways, we can earn a living, we can make a livelihood, we can pursue our passion that doesn't involve working for somebody else. It can just be teaching others about engineering. It can be showing others the cool things we can create using engineering. And then it can be selling others courses or products of that engineering, or how to build it myself kind of things. The opportunities of the future are really just limited by our imagination. So let's work on helping our children not just develop the basic skills, but develop those skills that they're passionate about, and give them an open mind to pursue that creativity and not learn to just be a drone. I know school is going to try to push them down and make them fit into a mold, but our job at home is to try to expand their minds and let them know that school is just one aspect of life, and it's not even the most important one, not anymore. And the final call to action is spread the word. It's time to evangelize, time to talk to your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors. This is one of those situations, like, sometimes we feel like, people feel greedy. I have this piece of information, I want to hold on to it. This is not one of those pieces of information you want to hold on to, okay? Because it doesn't put you at a competitive advantage. If you see the hope of a better future where we all rise together, but you're still trying to think about how you crush the competition, you're not there. And what's even worse is other people are still stuck in that old mentality, and we're going to end up in my fear, we end up in a Hunger Games situation because we're all too busy hating each other and pushing each other down to realize we can all lift each other up. And for the longest time in America, this is something I respected that I didn't see in other cultures around the world. In other cultures, they develop this fear where they just push each other down because they feel that if you have opportunity, that takes away from my opportunity. And it is a very dangerous thing that keeps the third world the third world. And in America, like I said, for the longest time, there wasn't this. It's this hopefulness, there is a lifting up of each other. But now that things are getting tight, because again, the wealthy and powerful have learned to concentrate that. We can talk about the economy and the borrowing money and how that affects inflation and all sorts of bad decisions along the way, losing manufacturing and not investing in our people. This is a huge conversation, right? And we haven't even scratched the surface. But I really want to talk about mindset today because it's what's going to allow us all to reclaim this confidence and understand that we all can rise together. But if we start getting greedy, we start trying to push others down, or worry that if we don't push others down, we're at a disadvantage. Our kids are at a disadvantage. If we think like that, we will go in a very bad direction, one that we don't like. It'll be one of those dystopian options that we fear. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we believe the world is limited and that we're competing with each other, we will live in a limited world where we compete with each other. If we believe there is an abundant, plentiful future where we can all lift each other up, then that's the future we will create. But it's going to require some soul searching. It's going to require a shift in our mindsets. And I highly encourage you guys to read books. There's a great book, Abundance, that kind of shifted my mindset on this. But we can't keep going down the same road we're going. We need changes. We need to be aware of these policies that on the local, state, federal level that need to change in order for us to do that. But like I said, the first thing is our mindset has to shift. There are plenty of resources out there. We can all be doing well. We don't need to be fighting. Spread the gospel, and let me know how that goes, and stay tuned for more. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much. Bye.